Hello, all you ghouls, guys, and gals out there. My name's Cooper, and welcome to the Twin Pines Hotel. Now, if you're here, it's because you've been searching for paranormal stories and encounters, and I'm here to tell you that you've came to the right place. Tonight, we're starting a weekly tradition here at the hotel to help burn the midnight oil while I'm working the night shift. It's strange. I've talked to all the employees, and none of them want to work the night shift. I've asked why, and all they ever tell me is, "You'll find out soon enough." It's weird, right? The only weird thing that's happened to me since I've been here is some stomping coming from those unruly guests that we have upstairs right now. I might have to go stop them later. I hope they don't interrupt what we're doing tonight. Anyway, let's get back to the tradition. So when I moved here to start this job, I found a giant pile of letters in the old hotel manager's office. I decided to open them up, and there were letters from all over the place. It seems like whoever was running this place before me was having people write the hotel and tell them their spooky experiences and scary stories that they've written. So instead of letting those letters just sit in a pile, I've decided to open up a couple of them every week and share them with all you creeps out there on the internet. Now, I know that was a long introduction, but we're going to go ahead now and get started. So grab a pillow, roast some s'mores. We're going to open our first letter. Okay, everyone, our first letter. Let's go ahead and open it up. So, our first story comes from someone who goes by Grouchy_ad1798, and their story is called, "Has anyone seen a tall shadow man that looks like he's wearing a long trench coat and tall hat?" I moved up to the city with my mom to take care of my grandma because she had a stroke and a heart attack, and we didn't want her to spend her last days in a nursing home. Anyways, I was working at a grow. This place was haunted and I could feel it. I would see things move out of the corner of my eyes, and I was thinking there was some type of poltergeist there because things would move on their own. Well, one day we were trimming and someone was talking, so I turned to look at them, and in the corner of the room was an extremely tall shadow person, like 8 to 9 feet tall. I couldn't see its face, but just an outline. It looked like it was wearing a long coat and a tall hat. I looked at it for a minute too. It let me stare at it. It knew I saw it, and it saw me. Then, when I turned back to get to my job, it made my scissors that were sitting blade down in a cup 1/3 full of alcohol spin full circle in the cup. I looked up to see if anyone noticed, and nobody did. So I just prayed over myself and everyone else on the property and continued my job. Then, about a week later, my grandma passed away. So I don't know if it was death or something I manifested for wallowing in grief. Have you ever seen anything like this? Now, I've heard stories about something very similar to this on the internet, and people on the internet call it Hat Man. Now, personally, I don't know a whole lot about Hat Man, but if you do know something about Hat Man, please post it below in the comments. Let's help Grouchy figure out what's going on. Our next story is from Gabriel, and it's titled, "What is Chained in My Mom's Room?" There have been a lot of weird things that have happened in the last year or so at my house, but I'm only concerned about this one because it has a very real and very physical effect on everyone in the house. So, about 6 months ago, my sisters experienced a really strange break-in. My sisters had their windows slightly open and could hear everything outside. It wasn't windy, but the wind chime was going crazy. They initially thought it was one of our cats trying to catch something, but then they heard super loud bangs on the front door. Our dog ran downstairs barking with his hair standing. My sisters followed him and looked out the peephole to see if it was me, but no one was there. While looking through the peephole and seeing no one is there, the doors started rattling, so they freak and run back to their room and call our dad. He's telling them, "Nothing is there, go get your mom." While saying that, they hear the very distinctive sound of a man and a large dog come up the stairs. The dog then started sniffing the bottom of their door. They grabbed whatever they could use as a weapon while staying on the phone with our dad and opened the door. There was nothing there. Since that night, whatever had entered has stayed and physically affected my mom, nearly killing her with an infection in her intestines. Neither she nor my 3-year-old brother can sleep in that room. My mom's friend has tried sleeping in the room and has been waking up with bruises similar to what happened to my mom before she got sick. She has since seen the creature in that moment in time where you were conscious but you were not awake. She also saw that it was chained to the floor. It is not a ghost, it is not a demon. We have tried sage and it weakens it but doesn't make it leave. We have told it to leave, nothing. We used mugwort and it made it stronger. It hasn't left the room at all. It has affected neither me or my sisters aside from the night it came in. Does anyone have any idea what this is? We think it's a curse or hex of some kind. Her ex seems like a likely candidate to have paid someone to do that. But whatever it may be, we need it gone and I have no clue how to. Any advice or help is appreciated. My mom has since named it Bubba. It's pretty weird. Thank you, Gabriel, for sharing your story. Now, if any of you out there have any idea of what Gabriel might be encountering, please put it in the comments below. All right, next up, we have some stories about a place that very few of us will ever go while we're alive. This comes to us from Turtly Awkward, and it's titled Graveyard Shift at a Funeral Home. I work overnight in a funeral home. My shift starts at 7 p.m. and I get off at 6 a.m. We've had some creepy things happen and I am loving it. I wanted to share it all with somebody but didn't know who. Here are a few of the things. 1. This one happens quite often. Outside of the prep room, the place in the funeral home where we embalm bodies, we will hear footsteps pacing the hallway. At any given point, there are no more than 4 people in the building on a normal night. So for 2 people to be in the prep room and hear this while everybody else is out on first calls would rule out the footsteps belonging to anybody. 2. This one also happens maybe 2 to 3 times a week. The door in my office will slam shut. The other day, for example, I walked through the office door after getting a drink from our break room and went to our dressing area and the door literally slammed shut behind me. It also happens when I'm at my desk and totally alone in the funeral home. 3. The hallway outside my office with the door that slams shut, I can also hear footsteps pacing back and forth. I tend to just close my office door when I'm working so I don't have to hear it at all. 4. Back to the prep room. One night I was chatting with 2 other coworkers outside the prep room. We had just finished embalming some people and were taking a bit of a break before cleaning up and disinfecting/sterilizing everything. We are all standing around outside the door and hear something hit the far wall of the prep room and then hit the ground. Me being me, I went to investigate and it was our trocar button tool, but the last person to use it, we all saw him set the tool down on his prep table about 30 feet away from the wall that it hit before dropping to the ground. 5. Another thing in the prep room that I didn't personally experience, but my coworker on the other shift swears by, is that he was prepping somebody while he was alone in the building and the phone on the wall started dialing out. The phone dialed a funeral home in Missouri, the same funeral home that the person on the prep table was going to be shipped to. 6. Last one. This happened last night actually. We have industrial yellow cabinets that our flammable fluids are stored in. On top of those cabinets are plastic bins that we will put babies in before going in the cooler. That way they can be more protected. Anyways, all of our bins fell off the top of the cabinet. There were 3 of us in the building. I was coming around the corner when I saw it. One person was in the prep room and the closest person to the cabinet was easily over 30 feet away. I love my job. Wow, that story showed me that you don't have to write a novel to send shivers up my spine. That is very strange stuff. Thank you very much for sharing it with us. Okay, listeners, it looks like we have time for one more story before I have to go make my rounds around the hotel. With any luck, I'm going to catch those people that are upstairs stomping around. Our last story is going to make sure you start flossing again ASAP. It comes from Little Lost Lamb 13, and it's titled, I've been a dental nurse for 2 years. And this was the worst thing I have seen. Our last patient of the day had come in for a crown. Super easy, standard. We see someone almost every day for a crown appointment. Myself and the other nurse I work with split these long appointments between each other as we both assist the only dentist we have working at the moment. It was my turn for this crown, which was great because the 3-hour appointments make the afternoons fly by. Some quick information on how a crown appointment works. We first have to strip away the old fillings, decayed enamel and cracks, leaving behind only healthy enamel and denting. Once we've removed all the bad parts, we have to create a margin around the tooth for the crown to sit on, leaving behind a seamless join after the crown is cemented on. Sometimes, the cracks or decay can go subgingival, which means we need to create the margin under the gum line. When this happens, the dentist usually just has to pack some cord in between the tooth and the gingiva just to push the gum away so that we can see the margins. The dentist, I'll call him Paul, was in the process of cord packing on our patient. I'll call him Dean, because the main crack in Dean's tooth that had been causing him pain extended quite close to the lingual gum line, or the tongue side of the tooth. We had to push the margin a little bit further under that. Paul had asked me for a length of size number 1 cord, which is dark blue in color. Usually, while we are cord packing, Paul will just tell stories about his childhood, or about teaching, or about something that happened to him that day, just to fill the silence while no noisy tools are being used. This time, he was telling us about his drive into work that morning, where he watched a young driver speed past him only to be immediately chased by a police car. Dean was open-mouthed chuckling along. I was quietly giggling to myself when Paul stopped dead, put the cord packer down, and quickly asked me for the camera. As his hand stretched out to grab the camera from his bracket, I turned to the plastic-covered mouse on the bench behind me to actually take the photos in the program. The camera sprang to life, showing us the bracket that Paul was pointing at while he turned the overhead light off so that the photo didn't turn out too bright. He pointed it towards the tooth we were working on, the old filling stripped away, the amalgam stain left behind in the healthy dentin, the mostly exposed margin, and the blue cord half poking out from the gum still. I could see where the cord had already been packed, leaving a blue line around about half of the tooth under the gum, but I could also see something else where the margin went the deepest. It couldn't have been the cord. This something else was a darker brown color, not blue. My first thought was that it was either a bit of food caught under the gum or even a very old piece of calculus, which had been left there for so long it had gone from the yellowish color it normally is to a dark shade of brown. That is pretty typical for subgingival calculus. I took 3 photos of the tooth at varying angles as Paul moved the camera around and waited for him to ask me to grab an ultrasonic scaler so we could clean out whatever was stuck there. As I looked at Paul, waiting for him to turn to me, I watched his eyebrows shoot up and his eyes go wide. I turned my attention back to the screen where the camera was still pointing, just in time to see a slight movement. It almost looked like a close-up of the cord being tugged on under the gum, but again, it wasn't the blue line that moved. It was the dark brown something. I whipped my head back towards Paul. He was already putting the camera back in its cradle and picking up the periodontal lobe, which is used to check the health of a patient's gingiva by pushing it into the gums. I watched Dean's forehead screw up just above the sunglasses he was wearing as Paul pushed the probe into the little perio pocket where the brown this was. I leaned my head as far over Dean as I could, trying to get a better look now that the camera view was taken away from me. I watched Paul sink the probe in beside the tooth, get caught on something, and then pull the probe back out and try again. After a couple of goes at it, I could tell that the local anesthetic was starting to wear off, and Dean was starting to feel what was happening. Paul turned the probe over, using the sickle side to pull the cord back out of the way, putting the now blood-soaked blue piece of string into a tissue I was holding. Paul switched that tool out for the hand scaler, the strongest and sharpest of the tools currently on the tray. After putting the tissue in the bin, I leaned back over. I watched Dean's face screw up again as Paul plunged the tip of the hand scaler back into the spot, going for a real dig, when the brown thing moved. Not just any kind of movement, not just being bumped by the scaler, this thing ran away. It zoomed to the other side of the lingual area of the gum, coming to a stop once it was out of reach of the hand scaler. Paul was stunned for a moment, then he shook it off and went for it again, really digging this time to try and get to it. Dean gasped, a look of panic on his half-covered-up face as he looked up into the shock in Paul's eyes. Paul struck gold then, victory taking over the look of shock as he tugged on the scaler. It looked like he had caught the brown spot between the hook of the scaler and the other tooth, so this time it couldn't flee. He tugged again, and I could see the effort strain in his forearm. He tugged once more, putting more effort into it, and it budged slightly. Determined now, Paul tugged again and again, twice in quick succession, the scaler almost coming out, pulling the spot up to the light of day with it. With one last tug, the scaler came free, and with it came a small, brown spider. It was bigger than it looked once it came out from the gum. Its legs uncurled now that it had space, and it ended up being about the size of my pinky nail. Seeing that spider sitting on Dean's tooth was enough to make me almost throw up in my mask. A live spider that was tucked in someone's gum for who knows how long. Paul reached for the tweezers on the tray when I saw another brown spot appear, almost like it was coming from the deep. Dean gasped again, a mix of fear and pain, and I watched another set of spider legs poke out from the pocket Paul had just pulled the first spider from. Dean tried to say something, tried to yell at us, still with his mouth half open. It sounded like something is moving in me, all garbled around Paul's fingers. The second spider pulled itself free as a third, fourth, and fifth brown spot appeared. I screamed, snapping Paul's attention back to Dean's tooth. He dropped the mirror at the same time I jumped out of my chair, tripped on the wheels of Paul's chair, and dropped to the floor like a sack of potatoes. I could hear Paul calling for the other nurse as my head contacted the hard floor with a sickening thud. Then everything went dark. When I woke, I was sitting in my car, my bag on the seat next to me and the keys in the ignition. The sky was getting dark at this point. I had no idea how long I had been sitting there or how long after I passed out they must have put me here. I decided to try the front door of the clinic, but it was locked and all the lights were off. I haven't tried to contact Paul or the other nurse yet, but a part of me never wants to go back in there ever again. I still don't know what happened to our patient after that. Oof. Nothing gives me the creeps more than body horror, and Little Lost Lamb's story did the trick. Yuck. Thanks so much for sharing, though. I love a good scary story. Okay, well, it seems like someone is upstairs in a room that they shouldn't be in, so I have to go check it out. But I want to thank everyone who stuck with us this far and enjoyed these stories. I also want to say thank you again to everyone who let us share their stories tonight. I sincerely appreciate it. If you liked what we did here tonight, be sure to subscribe for more weekly story sessions and documentation about the strange things going on here at the hotel. Hey, did that sound closer to you guys? Weird. Okay, I have to go check this out, but before I do, I have to send you guys off. Thanks for visiting the Twin Pines Hotel. We hope to see you again soon.